Very good. Hello and welcome to the Monday, July 27th Lake County School Board meeting. This is a regular school board meeting. If you would all rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance run by Mr. Mathias.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome again. Do we have any changes, amendments, additions, or deletions to the agenda?
I have a couple of items that we are pulling to discussion. One of those items is item 9.05. I want to give you an update on the calendar changes. Also, are pulling item 10.01. We're going to make an adjustment to the financial impact on that item that I can share during discussion. And then we are also pulling 10.08, the mental health annual report, for discussion and a presentation.
All right, excellent. Okay. So we're ready for approval of the minutes, Superintendent? Oh, was there any other changes, amendments, or deletions by the board?
No, ma'am.
No? And nothing by Stephanie. Okay.
I recommend approval of the minutes from the regular school board meeting, June 22nd, 2020.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes unanimous. Aye. Okay, moving on to public input today. Why don't we let Kim Cronin in? And while we do that, why don't we do an in-public one while Kim is loading up?
We have Mr. Klatt in the room with us. Mr. Klatt, if you'll give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. You know the drill.
Ready? All right.
Right.
Good evening, Mr. School Board Superintendent. President Trump said the coronavirus is going to get worse before it gets better. Governor DeSantis said teachers should have the option of working from home. Currently, federal offices are closed. State offices are closed. Health Department is closed. Social Security Department, Department of Labor are all closed. Yet we are looking at opening schools. If we look at Lake County's data, we see that as of July 24th, Lake County has had 294 positive cases of children under 18. In Florida, we've had 2 children die in the 5 to 14-year-old category. We have teachers, public safety employees who have all died. If we look at age or deaths by age breakdown, we see the percentages range from 1 to about 28% as when a population gets older. So if we look at a death rate of 1%, think of the people in this room, your family, your relatives. That total should be somewhere around 100 people. That means 1 person will die. Who will you pick? I'm here in person so you can see my face. I represent 3,000 of your teachers. Generally, statewide, we have 1 death every 10 minutes. We have a positivity rate of 11.25, and over 11,000 per day test positive on the 7th day average. Granted, you're not going to change any of your school reopening plans. For the overall safety of students and staff, I found the superintendent's Facebook with parents and students quite enlightening. But teachers have questions too. I may email each one of you a question about what we're going to do to guarantee the safety of our vulnerable employees. And the responses I got was all the same. Silence. Decisions have consequences. Thank you.
Kim Cronin.
No. Kim, your mic is muted.
Good evening, Superintendent and board members. I thought I had this right tonight so that I'd be able to speak to you. Just want to touch briefly on 9.03 and 9.04. I know your backs are to the wall. I know there's a lot of stuff going on. I think hopefully you all feel the same way I do, and that we shouldn't be opening school at all. But this new job description, and then the 904 is actually putting a person in that new job description. Employees they've been waiting for this to happen for the last few weeks. So I know it doesn't look good for employees. So I wanted to give you that. I know that they feel that maybe, this was the good old boy thing that took place here. So I know some explanation needs to be given. I did talk with Mr. Farnsworth, so I will share what he told me today to some of the employees that have contacted me. So on a more important note, I want to talk to you about transporting our students. Our bus drivers and our bus monitors have to be, they're the frontline people. They're going to be the most at risk here. There's going to be really no separation from bus drivers to students. I don't understand how we can just go ahead and pick up as many students that will get on the bus. I know we're not expecting all that many students to return to school, to the brick and mortar. So I'm hoping with that, we won't have full buses with 40 to 50 kids on it. One suggestion that I have is I gave you is what's online right now for our transportation department, where kids can sign up to ride the bus. This is what bus drivers normally give their students, okay? I think this is something that we should be able to put on the transportation website so that parents can fill it out. They can submit it right there on the website so that we pre-register our students, so that if we do see a bus that's kind of overloaded, we might be able to make some adjustments to that bus. We don't want our bus drivers passing these papers out to the kids and then collecting them back again. That's going to spread germs also. So I know that there's some possible way that we can do this so that we can pre-register the students, and hopefully maybe we can limit the amount of kids that are on one bus. With that being said, I thank you for listening to me. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. We have one more public input in person.
Yes, it's Mrs. Franklin.
Haven't seen Courtney Franklin in a while. Welcome back.
It's nice to be seen, Christy. Hi, Courtney Franklin, 11523 Clare Place. I'm a proud Lake County teacher and have been for many years. But tonight I'm coming to you as a parent. I've been a pretty active Lake County parent and teacher for probably the last 15 years and watched this board and this staff and other superintendents come up against problems and tackle them, and they passed, right? Obviously, this one is much more serious than the other ones. And I think that we have to remember two things. Now, there are powers that be that tell superintendents and school boards what they should do with the children, when they should go to school, how often they should go to school, and we're sort of pigeonholed into that. The most important thing that parents, I think, need to remember is that we're all in this together. This is a team effort. It's not us against the superintendent, it's not the teachers against the parents, it's not the admin against the school board, it's everybody against the virus, okay? So we need to all keep that in our memory when we're going through our things. It doesn't do us any good to belittle anybody else's opinions. Everybody has a different level of anxiety where the virus comes. Everybody has a different living situation, economic situation, cultural situation. Everyone is different. So we have to stay far, far away from taking anybody else's feelings and belittling them in any way. We are all in this together. Secondly, parents, we have to remember that this is a very well thought out plan. Whether you agree with it or not, whether you think we should go back to school or not, we're doing what the governor tells us to do. So with that said, if we don't get on board with picking our options, and there are 4 options, plenty of options. I realize that they're not fantastic. I realize that they're not all perfect. But if we can't get all on board and give our principals, our teachers, which I'm one of, time to plan, that's where mistakes are going to be made. Okay? We need to be prepared for this. So in order to get prepared for this, everybody needs to do their part. Your part as a parent is to pick which option you're going to go with. My part as a teacher is to understand that and keep your children safe. If I don't know they're coming, if the principals don't know they're coming, if the superintendent doesn't know they're coming, then it makes it that much harder, and that's when mistakes happen. So we can all do our part. Again, I'm not saying that we should open, shouldn't open, whatever. Everybody has their option. Everybody has a different situation. But what I do know is that if we're not prepared, then that's when we're going to run into the biggest problems. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Courtney. Mrs. Franklin, and we are at reports. So Ms. Turner.
Yes, ma'am. I have just 2 things for the board. First, I just want to remind everybody that the executive order number 69, which is the one that allows us to do these Zoom quorum virtual meetings, is expiring on Friday, July 31st. So unless that is extended by the governor, which I'm expecting it to be extended, but as of now it has not, that means that we won't be able to have the hybrid option that we've been doing. We'll need to have a quorum in the boardroom present. If that does get extended, I'll make sure to share that with you right away. And the second thing, I emailed everyone after last week's meeting 2 lawsuits that were filed by the Florida Education Association, one in Miami-Dade County and one in Orange County. I sent you those complaints last Monday or Tuesday. Nothing else has happened in those cases. The school board is not named in either of those, but obviously their outcome may impact us. So just wanted to let you know that those are still pending and nothing has happened since I sent the complaints. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Turner.
Do you have any sort of timeline as to when a judge or somebody might rule or come to some resolution on those lawsuits? I mean, obviously they have to be addressed before the start of school, right?
Right. Well, hopefully they are. The last thing on the dockets, they're just being served on the parties now. There was a notice of appearance filed in both of them today. So by law, they don't have to respond for 20 days after they get served. So I'm not sure we'll have an answer unless someone requests an expedited hearing, which they have not done as of now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. We're moving on to new business consent agenda. Superintendent.
I recommend approval of consent agenda items 8.01 to 9.04, 10.02 to 10.07, and 10.09.
So moved.
Second, do we have a second? Second?
Second.
All right, first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. Any opposed? Sorry, I missed that. Okay, your motion passes unanimously. And discussion. Okay, so moving on to the discussion, we have final approval of policies with Dr. Weiskopf. Is that,
Either way.
is this a hearing with the,
Wait, I thought we're not going to deal with the ones that we pulled for discussion already that was on the consent.
Or we can go ahead and do these, however you want to do it.
wait, I thought 11.01 is in discussion.
No, the superintendent pulled 9.05, 10.01, and 10.08.
Oh, so sorry, got it. Yes, so let's go to 9.05 first.
Right, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Farnsworth. As you know, we had to make some changes to to our calendar. He's met with the calendar committee, and so I've asked him just to tell you what the changes are to the calendar that's being proposed.
A few things. We had a lot of work to do in a very small amount of time. We did not pull full committee, which is made up of a few more people. What we did was we talked about the calendars and bargaining and discussed those with LCEA and SEIU. Hang on, let me see if I can get there we go. So in revamping these, the reasoning behind all of that was if we were going to add the additional week of pre-planning and push the school date now, instead of the students starting on 8/10, they'll start on 8/24. So their new school year will end on June 4. And teachers, where they were slated to start August 3rd and go to June 1st, now they're August 10th to June 7th. And there was very, very little wiggle room in making those shifts. So there wasn't a whole lot of room for weighing in and figuring out different options. Our goal in all of this was primarily outside of just shifting the dates was to make sure that all of our employees were paid on time with the paychecks that they were expecting. So we are within the letter of the law, and everyone will receive their first paychecks at the end of August. So that was the small victory out of all of this. So within that, there were not major changes within the calendar. There were a couple of PD days that were non-student days that were changed to student contact days in order to make sure we got all of our instructional seat time. And also we're eliminating the early release days that come at the end of the semesters. Second semester, we might not have to do that, but first semester for sure, we're eliminating those early release days to make sure we get our seat time. So there was not, like I said, not a whole lot of changes other than picking up the dates and moving them and adjusting some of the dates internal to the calendar. So I'd like to also thank any staff and folks at the district office that assisted in developing these new calendars. It is not easy to shift these around and still meet all the requirements of law. So thank you for that.
Chad,
Okay.
some of the questions that was when this was brought up before, when we talked about this, as far as the salary, some people are wanting to know if it's going to be a partial check or is it going to be a regular check?
No, this will be their full regular check. There's laws that do not allow us to pay people ahead of time, but because we annualize their payroll checks, it'll be their full check that they expected on August 31st.
Thank you.
And tomorrow we want to get board approval on the calendars, and tomorrow there'll be communication that goes out to folks to clear up any confusion of their start and end dates and some of those one-off positions that might exist that generate some confusion.
And Mr. Farnsworth, in the conversations that we had, we pushed the date back as far as we could to protect both our hourly and our teachers. That was to get them that check. Is that absolutely correct?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And if we move back any further, the discussion we had, just to kind of recapitulate our 9-hour workshop, if we move to the 30th, then what would that do?
Essentially, that would have moved beyond the 196-day calendar, and we would have been required to come up with funding to pay for more days, and that was something that we really couldn't afford to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Or whenever they started. Yeah. What Sandy is, Mr. Gamble is saying is that also would have moved. They would have gotten no check in August, and the earliest possible was September the 15th.
Yes, you have to have time. Yes, sir. Okay, now I get what you're asking. That definitely was a driver. You know, like I said earlier, we wanted to make sure everyone got paid on time, but that would have pushed us over because we're not allowed to pay for work that we're not allowed to pay ahead of them starting.
Thank you. Okay, Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Farnsworth, for getting those calendar revisions done in such a short period of time, and for LCEA and SEIU working very closely with you to get that accomplished. We're grateful for that. I'm asking the board to approve item 9.05, revisions to the district calendars for 2020, 2021.
So moved.
I have a first and a second and extra people on the line. So are all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. If anyone else is on the line, could mute, please. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 10.01. Dr. Weiskopf.
I'm actually asking the board to approve item 10.01. This is the instructional materials recommendation for American Sign Language, but approve with the changes to the fiscal impact to read that the estimated cost of the American Sign Language grades 6 through 12 instructional materials will not exceed $15,000 for a one-year purchase, and we will then renegotiate before extending the adoption. $15,000.
How do we go from 15,000 to 250?
Ms. Cockcroft, I know you've been kind of working on some negotiations to lower the cost, so I'll let you speak to that.
We have 1 year, we have one school coming out this year, and we anticipate several others in the next year. So we had budgeted for them and planned for them in the original contract. So we're going to make sure that they want to before we actually expend those funds. So we spoke with them today and renegotiated some of those pieces. But in the meantime, we want to make sure that the one school has the materials that they need for this year.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, do we have any other questions?
So moved. I don't think we moved.
Second.
Okay, Superintendent, do we have a recommendation?
I gave the recommendation. I'm happy to repeat it if we need to.
Mr. Dodd moved. And I
Okay,
seconded.
Mr. Dodd moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, none opposed.
Well,
Motion
I was
passes.
trying to squeeze a comment in there, just thanking the district staff for reevaluating that. You know, the original, that $250,000 was supposed to cover a 5-year period. So $50,000 a year, which makes perfect sense when you've got a whole district of schools adopting this. But since we're just starting off with one school, and that worked out to be a cost of more than $400 per kid per textbook. So I'm really thankful that you all were able to negotiate a much better price for that first year. And I love the idea that sign language will be available in person in our district. So I guess this is the, I guess kind of a plea to see if more schools will jump on board. It sounds like a great opportunity for our students and looking forward to it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to 10.08, Superintendent.
And item 10.8 is the approval of the 2020-21 mental health allocation plan. This is a required document to be submitted to the state and to receive those mental health dollars. But before I ask your approval, I've asked Dr. Landry to give us an update on the 2019-2020 plan, and she's prepared a great annual report that I think highlights the great work of our teams, both at the school and district level, in regards to our mental health and health services. And so I didn't want to miss the opportunity to celebrate their work tonight, and so I'm going to ask Dr. Landry to give a presentation with some highlights of the data from the past year.
Dr. Landry, you may be on mute. We can't see you, though.
Oh, there she is. Dr. Landry, I think you're muted.
This will be based on sign language.
There she goes.
That's right.
Okay. Goodness gracious. I'm having trouble getting all my screens organized here. Okay, so good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, superintendent, and it's been a little while since I've been able to be in front of you, so I appreciate the time allotted to me this evening to share. Hope all of you and your families are well. As you know, our mental health plan is on the agenda tonight. And as the superintendent said, I want to share some information and some data with you about our plan from last year. And again, thank you for allowing me to come in front of you tonight. I'm trying to move. Okay, there we go. Just a quick reminder of our mission statement. For mental health services, which is to deliver high quality mental health services and supports to all students. Wanted to just reflect on the original Senate Bill 7026, which is now the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act, that mandated that each school district create and implement a board approved mental health plan, and that started in 2018-2019. The state did provide some funding for this mandate, but many of the things that I'm going to share with you tonight would not have been possible without the funding provided by the referendum that the voters in Lake County passed in 2018. That referendum allowed for a 0.75 millage increase. Those additional funds are sent to the district, and with the focus on school safety, mental health, and nursing. So I just wanted to say that I'm honored to work in a district where the voters care as much about our students' mental wellness and safety as I do. Again, thanks to the voters in Lake County, the number of mental health professionals in our schools has dramatically increased, which brings more direct services to students and families. As you can see from this slide, in 2018, we had 164 mental health professionals in our district. Now we have 240, which brings the ratio of one mental health professional for every 171 students, which is far below recommended ratios. So I'm very proud of our numbers there. The professionals that you see here on this slide, these are an amazing group of professionals who are doing so much work for our students. I want to publicly share my gratitude for them and the passion and the hard work that they bring. But because we don't have unlimited time tonight, this presentation is going to focus on the new positions that are created by the referendum, essentially mental health and school-based nurses. Well, school-based nurses are not new for Lake County schools, but the referendum allowed us to place an LPN or an RN in every school, and I'll just share some data with you about that this evening. For the 2 years that we've been building this plan, we've been able to lay a strong foundation framework, and now we have it organized around 6 major components. Board members, you received the annual outcome report for 1920, which provides a lot of data and information around all aspects of the framework. What I'd like to do tonight, though, is just touch on and share a few highlights from each component. I'd also like to request that you please hold your questions until the end of the presentation. It's a little bit comprehensive, and so I'm hoping that at least some of your questions will be answered along the way. So thank you, I appreciate you doing that. So the first big component that we built our plan around is intervention for students. Mental health professionals are involved in all levels of our multi-tiered system of mental health supports. This MTSS framework is our district's basic infrastructure through which we deliver all of our academic, behavioral, and mental health instruction and supports and interventions. Providing social and emotional learning, or SEL, at the classroom level was one strategy that the mental health liaisons liked to use at Tier 1. We did some particular training around the program Sanford Harmony. And on these slides, move my people again. What it shows is the number of classroom lessons taught by mental health liaisons in elementary, middle, and high school. Again, Sanford Harmony's program was for K-6, so that program wasn't available for high school. They still did find some classroom programs to implement, but clearly not as many as the middle and the elementary. So we didn't see a lot of that at high school, but what we actually did see was restorative practices. Restorative Practices is a Tier 1 program that Lake County Schools has been implementing now for several years across the district. And the mental health liaisons participate in bringing some of those practices to the schools. So I just wanted to let you know, this is not any kind of total data for restorative practices. This would just be the sessions led by the mental health liaisons. So as you can see, the elementary is engaging in that somewhat. The middle school really liked restorative practices quite a bit, and the high school was doing more of that than just regular classroom lessons. And I'll talk about that more in just a moment. But I wanted to show you an example. This is from the mental health liaison, Dr. Clinkscales, to her teachers at Mount Dora High. And what she's done is she's organized the SEL around character traits, monthly character traits, and then operationalize those by supporting the teachers in leading restorative circles. So, for example, this given month, the character trait was trustworthiness, and she supported the teachers by providing them with some prompts to engage the student in the circles. And then after the circles were finished, Dr. Clinkscales also sent a brief Google survey to the teachers just to touch base and see if any students needed some one-on-one touch base time with her. So one thing that I want to explore with my team this year coming up is how do we specifically encourage and support classroom level lessons at the secondary level? Do we start thinking about HOPE or specials or clubs? I'm not really sure, but that's one thing that we are kind of thinking about as a team. Peer mentoring programs were discussed as one of the favorite pieces by high school students. In partnership with Be Free Lake, the You're Not Alone program has been implemented in 3 high schools over the past 2 years. Some of you may remember, I think Ms. Luke was actually there. The Chancellor of Innovation at DOE, Dr. Eric Hall, visited several districts in Florida to kind of get some feedback about how the mental health plans were going. He visited Lake County, and one of the consistent messages that we heard from parents and students at that meeting was that they really liked the peer mentoring programs. They liked this idea of peers helping and supporting one another. So given that and the constant feedback that we are hearing from the students to do more of that, we're going to spend, this year coming up, we're going to spend some of our state allocation mental health money to fund Be Free Lake to bring the You're Not Alone program to all the high schools this year in 2021. So we're very excited about that. I do want to talk for a few minutes about something major happened this year. We were required to provide mental and emotional health instruction for our students this year. As you can see from the graphic there, all but one of our schools fully delivered the instruction prior to the school closures in March. So not many districts were able to do that, and we did a really great job getting all that instruction delivered. And this is just an example. This is a summary of what we offered for the mental and emotional health. So it was EverFi's platform. All grades 6 through 12 got mental wellness basics. The high school kids had a module on alcohol education and awareness. The middle school students received digital wellness and safety. And then everybody got a module on e-cigarettes. So since this was the first time of us implementing this extraordinarily difficult task, it was hard to figure out how to make this work for 20 different schools. So I do want to thank the principals. They provided a lot of feedback and had a lot of input and latitude as to how to create a plan that would work for their school campus. So EverFi was this very flexible online platform. So there were several ways to deliver the instruction to the students. So as you can see on these slides, 6 high schools and 4 middle schools chose to have the students working on the modules on their individual technology. We were at the time moving very quickly towards becoming a one-on-one district. And so I think that individual technology was very appealing to some principals. And then 6 high schools and 4 middle schools chose to have teachers facilitating the instruction at the front of the class. Another option that we gave principals was the length of time in which to deliver the instruction. So 5 high schools and 2 middle schools chose to present all of the instruction in one day. One high school and one middle school delivered the instruction across 2 to 3 days. And then 4 high schools and 7 middle schools delivered it more slowly across more than 4 days. So for example, one school did a once a week mental health activity across several months. I'm going to come back to the implementation information in just one second. I just want to go ahead and tell you about part 2 of the instruction, because this piece was really important. All students were asked to complete an exit ticket after they received their instruction. It was a way for us to help monitor their needs and how they were responding to the instruction. So there were questions like, tell us one thing that you learned from today's lesson. The question was always there that said, would you like to speak to a mental health professional about yourself or a friend? Out of approximately 20,000 students, a request to talk to a mental health professional was made by 1,923 students, right? So 1,400 in middle and 511 in high. That's about 10%, which is kind of what we were expecting. Then as a result of the exit surveys, 393 students got follow-up services from either a school counselor, a mental health liaison, mental health specialist, school psychologist, school social worker. And that's about 2%, which is also about what we expected. And then one student was evaluated for suicidality based on their follow-up to the response exit survey. So for me, this was really one of the major positives of the required instruction. It was a big task for the districts to accomplish, but many mental health liaisons and counselors reported to me that these exit tickets led them to students that were never on their radars previously. And because this process impacted about 50% of our students, this really became like our universal screener for the year. They were very happy with these exit tickets. Now back to the implementation, we really wanted to gather some feedback from the important stakeholders, the students and the teachers, about how they thought it went. So what we did was we sent a survey to all of the teachers who facilitated the instruction. And as you can see from the slide, prior to instruction, only about half of them felt comfortable facilitating or moving into providing the instruction. After some support from the mental health folks, and then after the actual instruction itself, we got that number up to about 3/4. So about 75% of them afterwards said, okay, it wasn't too bad, it was fine. We asked them whether or not they thought it was beneficial to students, and 70% of them did believe that it was. And then in terms of student engagement, their perception was that about 60% were somewhat engaged and 32% were very engaged. So after we do the instruction this year, we're going to give this survey again, because I'd really like to see these numbers increase. So this is just another little bit of feedback on the survey. We gave space for some comments, and I pulled a couple of comments here that are very representative of what the teachers were thinking. Stuff like, we need more interaction with the students. We need some role plays. We need opportunities to debrief and process. Couple of them said, provide videos and interviews with real people who have overcome mental health issues. Integrate into the regular student curriculum and culture rather than being a separate standalone program. Offer mental health instruction throughout the academic year. It was pretty clear that it was unpopular on the one day, doing it in one day's instruction. The teachers didn't like that, and the students actually didn't like that either. And then that last comment there, avoid presenting sensitive information right before the holiday break, which does actually make sense. So again, back to Chancellor Hall's visit, when he was here gathering feedback, it was a very clear message from parents and students that they really didn't like the instruction all in one day. And they felt like the students were less engaged when they were on their own to move through the modules versus having a teacher facilitate. So moving into next year, we want to consider all of those things. And what we're going to do is we've partnered with Edgenuity on Purpose Prep Several of the Edgenuity platforms are already being utilized by Lake County schools, which makes the integration super fast and clean. For the youth mental health education, Purpose Prep is an online platform that does have videos from real people and kids and experts and teachers, and provides a lot of professional development for our teachers. So before we do the instruction, they are actually going to provide a lot of support, professional development. They have teacher facilitation guides. And I hope that with that included, with that extra PD, that will lead to a higher comfort level with the teachers and a stronger engagement of the students. And this is just a little blurb from Purpose Prep. We are currently working on the plan, don't have it all laid out yet, but again, we want to make some adjustments based on the data that we gathered. Some schools participated in programs to enhance positive school culture and connectedness. These programs are really cool. While only 6 schools participated in the Sandy Hook programs, those programs were Start with Hello and Say Something. Look at the impact on the number of students. So over 3,500 students were impacted when only 6 schools got to participate. So that's a very big number. We want to do more of these kinds of experiences this year because that payoff is so large. I thought you might be interested in seeing an example. As part of Start with Hello Week, the students and staff at Leesburg Elementary created a helping hand tree that's in one of their corridors. So moving up the MTSS framework to Tier 2 and Tier 3, I want to talk a little bit about individual and group counseling as provided by the mental health liaisons. Running targeted small groups was a favorite strategy for the mental health liaisons to be able to work directly with students and impact multiple students at one time. They loved running these groups, and we want to do more of that this next year. This slide shows some of the examples of their areas of focus. As you can see in the schools, group counseling provided at elementary schools was quite large. The first graph is the number of sessions provided. The second graph is the number of students. So those are unduplicated students in the green graph. And again, what we see is very popular in elementary, less so in middle and high and secondary. Individual counseling, very similar thing. I wanted to point out to you that individual counseling in our schools for the mental health liaisons is generally brief in nature and focused on educationally relevant content. For those students who need heavier therapeutic intervention, we refer those students out to our partners at Livestream and other contracted agencies. But these are some of the topics that can be covered by individual counseling by a mental health liaison, and they're doing all of that. So individual counseling, again, by the mental health liaison, here we see the sessions provided, and then also the number of students receiving the counseling. Now the sessions provided, we have to keep in mind that there are twice as many elementary schools. This was true for the previous data as well. So that's why their numbers are always bigger, because when you factor out and look at just the students who are receiving counseling, you can see that the impact that it's having on middle school is quite large as well. Again, with this small lag at high school, and when we talked with our mental health liaisons about that, what they shared with us that they had a lot of drop-ins, a lot of kids who would just stop by, I have something I need you to help me with right now, rather than more scheduled group counseling. And that's something we want to work on again this year to kind of become more preventionists and planning. Collaboration is a big part of our plan. It's it was our second component. We have a very strong relationship with Livestream Behavioral Center, and it's gotten stronger. And these are the aspects of Livestream that we are currently working with. Providing students with children's clinical on-site counseling, we call that CCOS services. We've been doing that for a long time with Livestream, but the increase in the amount of services this year was was quite noticeable. What you can see across the green chart is that 863 students were served. And even in the months when we weren't in school, they very quickly went to telemedicine and continued to serve our students. I want to remind you that some of our state mental health allocation money we put into a fund to be used by Livestream for underinsured students and uninsured students. And so I wanted to share with you that of these 863 students, 271 of those students had access to these services purely because of that money that we put aside for them in Lake County schools. So I think that's absolutely amazing. Those students would not have gotten any services last year. So again, thank you to the voters. So continue on with collaboration. From Livestream, there is a clinical coordinator. Now this person is a Livestream employee, but funded by Lake County Schools and our mental health money to bridge the connection between our mental health program and Livestream. 100% of her job is dedicated to meeting the needs of the students in Lake County Schools. She's also one of the main points of contact for a school-based mental health professional when students are experiencing suicidal ideations and determined to be at risk. So she can go to the school, do some de-escalation, do a comprehensive assessment, and provide some wraparound services so that we can not Baker Act. And she's done 74 of those this year. We also have another layer in place, is referred to as the mobile response team. This team is amazing because they respond 365 days a year, 24/7 for children and families in crisis. This team is one of the final options that we go to when schools have crises instead of Baker Acting students. This is another team we can call, and we had such great success with them this year. They helped us with 94 cases, and they always responded extremely quickly. Community action team, students and families who need more intensive services are referred to this team, again through Livestream. These are high-level wraparound services that decreases the number of children referred to out-of-home placements. So we got 70 students helped through the CAT team this last year. An additional 673 students in need of services received therapeutic services from our contracted agencies. We have 13 or 14 of those. So that was another big group of students that received service. I wish that I had more time to tell you about this consortium that we have, but we don't. I'll just tell you briefly that on the screen there are most of the agencies that are part of this consortium. We call it the Lake County Continuum of Care. We meet monthly and we talk about programmatic issues across agencies for for example, information and data sharing was a big one this year that we had to talk about multiple times and try and work things out to make that possible. And then we also talk about the neediest of our students and the most vulnerable students and families and how we can get services to them. So this is a very powerful work group and we meet once a month. Crisis intervention is probably one of the most serious roles for our mental health professionals. There are generally three kinds of crisis response: a school level crisis, for example, the death of a student or a teacher, individual students experiencing suicidal ideation, and then the behavior threat process for individuals posing harm to others. And our mental health folks work in all three of those kinds of crises. This is a tool for schools to use. It's a step-by-step flow chart for responses, communication, and action. Another requirement from the state this year was to have at least 2 people on every school campus trained in a standard suicide risk assessment tool. In Lake County, we are using the Columbia Suicide Severity Risk Scale. It's a measure of suicide ideations, and it lets us know whether or not the student is at no risk, low risk, medium risk, or high risk. So on every campus, the mental health liaison and at least 1 school counselor are trained in the use of the Columbia. So here are the numbers. So this is the number of risk assessments that were completed this last year at each of the levels. 335 at elementary, 218 at middle, and 178 at high. I have to be honest, we were a little surprised by the number at elementary. We thought that that was kind of high. So what we did was we dug into the data just a little bit more. And what we discovered was that the majority of the assessments for elementary were no risk or low risk. And you can see that in this graphic, and actually that's true for all three groups. That didn't surprise us because we are training our folks to be vigilant in doing assessments. Like no matter how low risk or it seems, we want that Columbia done just to make sure. So they were doing a lot of them, and I'm happy to say the majority of them were low or no risk. Now, if you look at the combination of medium and high risk, at elementary you have 71, at middle school 76, and at high school 74. But if you put that number in context and look at the percentages of high risk compared to the overall for that level, what you get falls right in line with what we would expect. So at the elementary level, 19% of the overall assessments were high risk, only 19%. And then at middle school, 35%, and at high school, 28%. So that is more in line with what we would expect, with the elementaries being much, much lower. So again, if a student is determined to be at high risk on the Columbia, the next steps are taken in a very specific sequence in order for us to layer those supports. So this graph shows who and how many performed that more comprehensive risk assessment. So the first step is always to go to the student's CCOS counselor. If they have a counselor, let's use that person to do the full evaluation because they already have a relationship with them. If that person isn't available, we go to that clinical coordinator that I talked with you about. And she actually did quite a few assessments over the year. And then if she's busy or not available, then we contact that mobile response team and they respond. Because we have so many layers in place to address students who are really experiencing high levels of suicidal ideation, our Baker Acts were dramatically reduced this year, and that is a goal that I think all of us have been wanting for many years. I received this data. I wanted to show you that first. I received this data this morning from the Lake County Sheriff's Office, and this is unbelievable data. Now, what she wanted me to make sure that I share is this is only Lake County Sheriff's data. And this is the number of Baker Acts of students taken from the schools. So not from home, just from the schools. But last year, 2018, 2019, there were 65 of those off of our campuses. And when we say Baker Act, really what we mean is that we've had to call law enforcement, or the SRO on the campus helps us. And unfortunately, they put the child in the back of a police car and they have to take them to the emergency unit at LifeStream. So we went from 65 the previous year to just 24 this year. So we see that as a major accomplishment because we really don't want to be further traumatizing students in that way. So, and then I just want to say that providing students with support when they return from a hospitalization or an alternative placement is critical for their smooth re-entry into the regular school setting. So the mental health liaisons were responsible for setting up these back to school meetings and then working with students to develop self-advocacy plans to give them confidence and strategies to advocate for their own needs. Okay, so that's after. Component number 4 is parent and community awareness and education. We got some very fundamental things accomplished this year, like the creation of a fantastic mental health portal for parents and families and teachers to access. There was a newsletter, but this is an area where we hope to grow this year. We really want to do more community outreach and partnering. Just as a matter of sharing, the mental health liaisons, here's the number of community events that they attended and the number of school-based events where they shared information about mental health and mental wellness. Component 5 is professional development of the school staffs. Another state mandate this year required that all Lake County school employees are trained in mental health awareness at a minimum. The expectation is for a deeper training on the topic to build a strong force of adults who know how to talk to students and in need and get them to appropriate resources. So kind of the gold standard and what was expected is youth mental health first aid. That's the 6-hour face-to-face training. And this year we got to train 1,248 of our folks, which is about 27.7% of our employees. And given that we have 3 years to get all of our folks trained and our school year was cut short, I'm gonna consider this to be good news. Because it was very close to a third of our employees. Last year, we had 6 mental health professionals who were trained to deliver this program. This year coming up, we have 10 trainers. And the possibility of an online component. With all of the school closures, the National Council has put together an online piece. So we'll be looking into that as well. Now, because we couldn't get all of our staff trained in that youth mental health first aid immediately, what was required was that they participate in the Cognito program, which is a basic mental health awareness program. It helps participants recognize warning signs, start conversations, and give a warm handoff to a mental health professional at the school. I'm very proud to say our mental health liaisons led that charge at their schools, and we trained, they did a phenomenal job. This is the numbers that we trained at each level, and it was over 95% of our staff, of our entire school staff. So kudos on that. We also focused last year on trauma-informed care. This is an above and beyond focus above what's required by the state, but we do feel like it's very important. This will continue to be our focus as we start the school year and support our students returning after being gone for 5 months. And right now we have 548 employees trained, but again, we will be moving forward with more of that training. Program development, I have to say some of the most intense work that the mental health folks have to engage in doesn't really have a direct impact on students, but it's the development of the program, the data collection, the program evaluation, creating tools for families and students. So that's also a big piece of what they do. I want to switch over to nursing services. One of the major successes from last year, I think, is the placement of an LPN or an RN in every school. Again, thank you to the Lake County voters who passed the referendum. This is an amazing feat. And I do have to say, as I go around to the state meetings, that I talk with many districts who are very envious that we get to have a nurse in every school. So I'm very proud of that. Not only is the volume of the student care amazing, I mean, look at these numbers here. The total number of clinic visits is 120,000 across the year. And then on top of that, their engagement with mental health has been excellent, and they have made almost 3,000 referrals for mental health. So they're part of our mental health team, and in that clinic, they get to see students pretty regularly, and they get to engage with them and make those referrals. So not only is the care amazing that they're providing on their school campus, but I really feel like we are now prepared to move into next year, much more prepared than we would be if we didn't have a nurse in every school. I can't imagine where we would be if we didn't have a medical professional on every campus. So I'm very proud about that. Let's see, I think my last slide here in closing, really, I just wanted to kind of come back around and take all this information and show you how we're going to move forward with the plan, in the plan for 2020-2021. All the work for all 6 components that we talked about is going to continue. As we discussed, there's going to be a new platform for the student mental health instruction, incorporating all of the feedback from all of our stakeholders. We are going to bring You're Not Alone to all high schools. I think that that's going to be well received. This next year coming up, I've moved from having 6 mental health specialists at the district level to 4 mental health specialists at the district level. Now that the program is up and running, has a good foundation, I wanted to reallocate some of the funding to support an area that we continue to struggle with, and that's basically students with very challenging behaviors. So the director of ESE and we shared funding and created a administrative coordinator position, and that person is in charge of behavior supports and alternative placements. That person's going to provide leadership with all things behavior, and that really is going to support some of the things that we struggle with this school year. We want to move from reacting and putting out fires. We did lots and lots of that this year. Next year, we really want to become more aware of intervention and prevention and kind of get us on the other side of crises. And then finally, I wanted to make sure that you knew that the distance learning plan for mental health services is included in the plan, because we want to make sure that we're able to provide services for students who are learning at home or forced to quarantine, of course. Okay, thank you for allowing me to go all the way through that. And I would love to answer any questions that you have.
Ms. Luke, did you have, I think she's just moving. I did want to,
Okay. No, I actually just wanted to say thank you. I know that it was a last minute request for that presentation we put together, and I appreciate Dr. Landry's work in this and allowing us the opportunity to celebrate some of the things that we've been able to do as a result of the 3/4 millage money. And also just that knowing that we are looking at what we did last year and working to be more preventative versus reactionary, it was excellent to hear. So I just give you some kudos, Dr. Landry, to your team. And again, I just want to reiterate to her regarding the voters and how they have supported our district with the mental health services. We just couldn't do this without them. And it just shows how powerful those partnerships can be. So I just want to say a big thank you. And will we be talking about this again on the 17th, Mrs. Cornegie?
We can certainly add this to the agenda for further discussion. I know one of the things that we've been working on is bringing to you a presentation that really highlights all of the outcomes from the 0.75 millage. We were well underway in getting that presentation together when COVID hit, and it derailed us a bit. We have not circled back to really finalize that presentation. I'm not sure if we'll have it ready by the 17th, but it will be coming shortly. And that will have all the additional information that you may be looking for.
Looking forward to it. I appreciate it.
The administrative coordinator, is that a new position, or is that in place of 2 of your district mental health people?
So the actual position is new. We've not had it before, but I took funding from the 2 folks that I did not rehire in that position, and then ESC provided the other half of the money from IDEA. So
Okay.
we put our funds together to create this new position that we really think is going to be impactful this year.
Okay, that's great. I wanted to make sure we weren't increasing too much.
No.
Okay, this looks great. I'm very pleased. Mr. Dodd.
Yeah, well, my comment is more so in that you see so many resources that we have available to our students that we didn't have prior. And going back to this 3/4 of the mill and thanking our voters for that, I can't help but be concerned that in a future year, if the voters, for whatever reason, don't feel compelled to renew that, all these services would go away. And I know that we weren't alone as a district who had to go to the voters to seek funding to support these sorts of measures, that many other school districts across the state had to do so. It almost seems as if sharing this sort of information with the state, and it'd be nice to see our legislative delegation also be on board with providing the support that districts need to make this happen, as opposed to having an unreliable source of funding. I can't imagine if 1 year our voters say, you know, I think our property tax is a little too high. Let's cut all this. It'd be devastating for our students.
They would. I very much would. I agree.
I agree, and I guess what I'd like to say is by the time that it comes back around for voting, what I hope is that they see what we see, and that is that these services are irreplaceable. Like it's amazing, and their money is being spent so fiscally responsibly and is so impactful that they will vote yes again. That's my hope.
I agree.
Dr. Burns.
Yes,
Can I
go
make
ahead,
a
Mr.
comment?
I
Matthias.
honestly just want to reiterate that that's why I found this presentation to be so important. So again, putting it together and allowing the opportunity for Dr. Landry to present, I think is critical as we continue to roll forward. And I know when I was speaking to Mrs. Corney, I said nobody's talking about it right now, but they will be in the next couple of years when it comes time to renew. So I just appreciate the effort annually to reiterate the importance of these positions and what they do for our kids. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Matthias.
Yeah. I'd just like to say that this district recognized early on that we had to protect our kids, and that right after MSD and the massacre there and Sandy Hook and that massacre, that our voters also understood that we needed to protect our schools, which we've done. But this part is the most important and the one I'm the most proud of, Dr. Landry, is what you have done for the early intervention and getting these kids their help. The numbers speak for themselves, and you are saving lives. I will say that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you so much for saying that. And I wanted to just pass that on to an amazing team. I am just one person, and I'm surrounded by professionals who are passionate about this work. I could not do this without this large team that I have, so thank you.
I cannot wait for recommendation. Can't wait for recommendation.
I just want to say that your team and yourself did a fine job on this as well. And the thing that can you not hear me? But
No.
the thing that I look at is the numbers are coming down instead of getting bigger. And some of our suicides and things of that nature there. And that's what's impressive to me. And it's because of what the voters did. And I think when they see the results of this, that they were going to say, we need to keep this program at hand. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. So we have a recommendation. So we need
No,
a.
we don't have a recommendation yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
I am recommending approval of item 10.08. That's the Lake County Schools Mental Health Assistance Allocation Plan for the 2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. So now we're on 11.01 in the discussion.
Yes, the matter before the board is 11.01, final approval of 3 policies, 5511, dress and grooming, 5600, student discipline, and 8330, student records. This is a public hearing. Dr. Weisskopf, is anyone on the phone to speak to this issue?
No, ma'am, they're not.
Okay. And anybody in the audience wish to speak to the issue? Seeing none, I believe it's appropriate to close the public hearing.
Okay. Superintendent, do we have a recommendation?
I recommend approval of item 11.1, the final approval of the 3 policies as listed.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. 11.02.
Yes, ma'am. 11.02 is the final approval of the 2020-2021 Code of Student Conduct and Policy Guide. This is a public hearing. Dr. Weisskopf, is anyone on the phone to speak?
No, ma'am, they're not.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I believe it is appropriate to close the public forum.
I recommend approval of item 11.02, the final approval of the 2021 Code of Student Conduct and Policy Guide.
So moved.
Second.
Awesome. Good job, Jace.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes with help from Jace. 11.03.
Yes, ma'am. The item before the board is final approval of the 2020-2021 student progression plan. This is a public hearing. Dr. Weiskopf, is anyone there?
No, ma'am, they're not.
Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this issue? Seeing no one come forward, I believe it is appropriate to close the public hearing.
Superintendent?
I recommend approval of item 11.03, final approval of the 2020-2021 student progression plan. I still don't think I got that.
So moved. A lot of 20s.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
I have just a couple of things in response to some public input. I want to thank Ms. Cronin for sending the transportation eligibility card. Having an idea of what she wanted to speak to was really helpful because I was able to talk with Mr. Weeks prior to the meeting. He said this form can easily be transferred to an online form for parent submission, and I've also talked with Mr. Fender, so we've got that in the works. Also, I wanted to address the issue about one of the things that we've heard is that teachers, we know, and employees have a lot of questions, and today we did some Facebook Live sessions specifically for parents. But there were questions that were submitted on the online Facebook page in preparation. We had over 900 responses, and so there was a lot of questions, and there was a section that were specific to employees. So we pulled those questions out, and we're going to be completing an employee FAQ that we'll be posting online. And in the meantime, we're getting ready to launch an employee intent form similar to what we did for students recently, where we'll be asking our instructional personnel to choose whether they would prefer to return to a brick and mortar school and teach, whether they would like to teach for Lake Virtual, whether they would prefer the Lake Live option, or whether their intent is to take leave for the year, because we've heard several say that they were considering that. Once we have this information along with the completed intent forms by the parents, we'll be able to look at allocations, look to see what opportunities there are for employees who might want a virtual option, and be able to work with LCEA to determine how those positions people will be placed in those positions. So really the driver of all of this, while we'll be asking our employees, our instructional employees first to complete this intent form, is we need every parent to go online, hopefully by Wednesday, and complete the enrollment intent form, because there are so many decisions, so many of the questions that our employees have are really contingent upon the outcomes of what parents are choosing for their child. And so a lot of times when they're asking questions, we just don't have answers yet because we're waiting for that to close. As of right now, we have about 20,000, so we're about halfway there. And so we're very hopeful that once we get the student FAQ and parent FAQ out there, that would give them the answers to the final questions that they need to make a decision. So we need everyone to please help us to encourage parents to complete that form. Then we can come back and look at the requests from our teachers and help to place people accordingly with help from LCEA. So I just wanted to tell you, as we're hearing what about teachers, what about our options? We are working to develop some options for teachers. But as I said, it's really contingent upon first what the parents are selecting for their children. The last thing that I wanted to mention is, it was mentioned earlier about scheduling executive session. And so I'd like for the board to think about sooner rather than later scheduling executive session. And what I heard from you, Ms. Turner, is that this would have to be face-to-face if that is not extended. I'm assuming that executive session would not be able to occur virtually either. Would that be true?
Correct.
Our next meetings, a lot of times we'll put executive session up against a regular meeting. That would be the 10th. If you'd like to schedule one sooner, we could certainly do so. So I'll just open that up for the board to have some discussion about when you might like to schedule executive session.
Comments, anyone? The 10th is fine. Go ahead.
The 10th, yeah, the 10th works for me. I was just going to say, we're actually leaving the 1st to the 9th, and so the 10th would work great.
I'm available the 10th as well.
I'm good too.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
All right.
So I'm sure Natalie will check with everybody and we will
All right,
come to that.
We'll work on a time and get that scheduled for you so we can begin that discussion.
Okay.
I do have a few letters of condolence before I turn it over to the board for your comments. First of all, David Lofgren, he's a longtime principal at Claremont High School, passed away, and condolences were sent to his family. Also, condolences were sent to Teresa Frisbee. She's a sister of the Tavares Middle School teacher, Kimberly Stout, who passed away. Teresa Frisbee is one of our program specialists in student services, and Kimberly Stout is the sister-in-law of Walter Frisbee, who is a teacher at Tavares High School, so condolences to that family. Also, Douglas Hazley, father of Mandy Strem. She's a teacher at Umatilla Elementary and father-in-law of Ryan Strem, who's assistant principal at Eustis High School. So condolences to that family as well.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so at this point, we have board member comments. And last time we had talked about the letter to the governor. So since I wrote that, I'm going to go first. We can discuss the letter and then we can just have regular, I'll waive my own comments and just have regular board member comments afterwards, if that's okay with everyone.
Sure.
Okay, so you guys all have the letter. Just so the public knows, we talked about writing a letter saying basically that the governor says we have the ability. Our local health department is saying they can only advise. Both things can't be true. Like somebody has to have control over the school. So I wanted to ask for local control. This is the version I wrote, and then Mr. Johnson read. I can read it out loud. We could discuss it if you've already read it. What is your pleasure?
Well, I think for the public, maybe you should go ahead and read it
Okay.
into the record.
Okay. So the letter goes, Dear Honorable Governor DeSantis, first I want to thank you for your dedication to serving the citizens of Florida and Lake County during the COVID-19 pandemic. We at the Lake County School Board understand and agree with the executive order DOE number 2020 E06. We support the statement that the Lake County schools need to open with the full panoply of services for the benefit of Florida students and families. We wish to ensure the quality and continuity of the educational process and the comprehensive well-being of students and families. Lake County School Board supports a return to Florida hitting its full economic stride by opening schools. Our local health department has advised the school board that, and I changed this, so I hope you have this, for a sustained reopening, the Lake County School District needs a waiver of the order. Lake County Department of Health has agreed that it is appropriate for the Lake County School Board to open brick and mortar schools at reduced capacity. We request the ability to work with our Lake County Department of Health following CDC recommendations and partnering with our local and state pediatricians and physicians to open and close district schools as may be needed. The Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Lake County Department of Health has advised that when our local viral positivity drops below 3 to 5%, then our schools will be safe for 100% return to brick and mortar. And that is what we strive for. We in Lake County wish to not only meet your goals, but we wish to surpass these goals by helping our public schools open for the betterment of our children's education and the ability of parents to stay at work. Instead of quickly opening and then being forced to close because of high number of individual quarantine shutdowns throughout our county, we intend to open in such a way as to continuously support our community with brick and mortar education throughout the remaining entire 2020 into 2021 school year. We ask for the flexibility that a waiver of DOE order number 2020 E06 and the return of local control provided under Article 9, Section 4 of the Florida Constitution, which provides that the school board shall operate, control, and supervise all free public schools within the school district. This authority will provide that we can be nimble and quickly change to meet the responding needs of all of our schools without a waiver. Currently, the order eliminates local control and our ability to respond. Here in Lake County, your goals are our goals. We want to fully open schools and we want to fully open our economy. In Lake County, our constituents expect us to work hard as a school board to bring value to our children, our community, and our state. We proudly serve our children, and we know the scholars of Lake County schools will bring great value to the future of Florida. Thank you for your consideration. Thoughts?
The only thing that I wanted to qualify, very well written, by the way, Dr. Burns.
Thank you.
But But I want to ask this of legal. Do we need this letter, or do we already have that control?
I'm looking at the emergency order that Dr. Burns' letter references, and I do believe that we already have this authority. And I see Steve is on the line if he has any different opinion and wants to weigh in. But I believe, looking at the order, that this is something that we already have the ability to do.
But we can't.
You're saying, but we can?
We can't. How can we have the ability to do it yet not be able to do it?
That is the problem with the way the order is drafted. The order says that we must open brick and mortar schools in August, but it does say that absent these directives, the day-to-day decision to open or close a school must always rest locally with the board. So the order itself is contradictory, and this has been a big complaint by school board attorneys and school boards and superintendents associations. So I recognize that it's not well written, but that is what it says.
Mr. Johnson, do you have an opinion?
I'm not sure if he's on.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Can now that you unmuted yourself.
Yes, thank you. No, I agree with what Elizabeth said, that the order in it says that the emergency order says that the school board has the right to operate schools. At the same time, it says quite clearly that by the end of August, school districts in Florida will have their brick and mortar schools open and available to all students. Those two are difficult to reconcile, and I think a lot of people have had the problem of reconciling it. The question is, do you want to be the ones who contest it in court? I would think that that's not the case.
I don't think this letter say anything about court.
I didn't write anything about court.
Nobody said, I know that, but the only way that you resolve a conflict in an order that affects you would end up having to go to court. And I think some of the other counties have considered that, and they have all thought that's, it is clear from the order that the emergency requirement is that schools be open for occupation before the end of August.
And after that, we can close that.
After that, if something happens and there's an emergency and the local health department agrees with the school district about issues for a particular school or a particular group of students, I think that order would allow the school board to go in and take action regarding that thing. But I don't think you get to not open schools, the brick and mortar schools, before the end of August. You can't make a decision to say, well, I'm not going to do that until November. That would be directly contrary to the emergency order.
And remember, opening what I think the health department is recommending is opening the brick and mortar, but doing it at like 50%. So you would have that, you would do that 50-50 thing. And then we would shift to brick and mortar. Like the idea is to get there.
Elizabeth, tell me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the order say it has to be open for all students?
Yes, sir, it does.
Right, which is why I think I think somebody has to have the ability to not open at full capacity. And if that's not us, and it's not the governor, it has to be somebody. And it's not the health department.
Don't we think that the parents that are going to be choosing 4 options, that's your body that's going to tell you how many kids you're going to have? I mean, you may end up with 50% after the survey comes in. That's why the survey is so important.
That's possible. Just because we ask for the right to have our rights doesn't mean we have to use it. I'm only asking us to write a letter.
But if we write, Dr. Burns, I want to support you on this, but if writing a letter, there should be some expectation that something's going to happen if it's viewed as being reasonable. And we've
you
already
not think-
decided, no, I think that we decided that based on, for the benefit of our kids and the economy, our teachers, that, and the 24th became a magic number because it doesn't disrupt the pay schedule or pay for our classified or affects our teachers and the calendar,
Right,
all those
this
dynamics.
isn't
I don't
moving
I don't
those
see us going
dates.
back and revisiting the 24th is my point.
No,
So,
this doesn't do that.
but
This
after
opens
the-
schools fully on the 24th
but
at 50% capacity, and half would be virtual.
But what I thought I heard Elizabeth and Steve say is that after we open, based on what the governor has directed us, if we needed to take action, we have that authority. Is that correct?
That's the way I read the order. Steve and I have discussed that. That's our understanding.
So when Steve and I talked about it today, it was, I don't know if he can speak up.
I can hear you.
Oh, go ahead, Steve. Yeah, because he was telling me about that, if we got half the school or something. My issue.
I've been telling you that the health department really doesn't have anything to say about what we do is to comply with the emergency order. Not at this point in time. Nothing in the health department's mandate by statute gives them any authority or power to tell the school board what to do or not to do. They can make recommendations and suggestions, and that's about the extent of it.
And that's what he said the other day.
And most of the recommendations we are following for the most part.
I will say this, that one is.
Well, we're opening the schools at full capacity. That is not a recommendation by health experts.
But you're not going to, with 4 options on the table, I can't see on this planet that you're going to have 43,000 kids back in school. I mean, the surveys, before we even came out with our new survey to support our survey, was about 50-50. And so you're going to be at half capacity based on parents' choice, which is where it should be.
I think the school will be at half capacity, but I don't think the classrooms will be. So what I'm gathering from this letter is that we're requesting the ability to make that decision. I don't think 5 days a week for all of our students, and that's contrary to what we heard from the health department as a recommendation for us to not be a high risk situation. Right. So I guess what sort of relief we are asking from the state on this letter is the ability to make that local decision. Right now we don't have it.
I don't know where the
Right, and I
background
don't know
noise
how
is,
the-
but I couldn't hear Mr. Dodd.
Yeah, what is this background noise?
Steve, mute your mic.
Mr. Johnson, mute your mic, please. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Dodd, can you say that again?
Oh, sure. Okay, it was profound. Let me see if I can come up with that again. So I was suggesting that the executive order is requiring us to open 5 days a week for 100% of our students. Now, yes, while the schools may not be at 100% capacity, it seems like the classrooms there pretty much will be, though. If teachers are going to, instead of hosting their class there at school, they're going to be doing the Lake Live option or something else of the sort, I'm not sure that we get our classrooms significantly down in size, and therefore we cannot do the 6-foot distancing that the health department is recommending. I think we heard from Aaron Kistler say that this will be a high-risk situation. So it seems like the relief we're asking for from the state is for us to be able to make a local decision, because right now we don't have that choice to do so. I think, well, I can speak for myself that I voted for reopening last week only because I'm required to do so under the executive order. Otherwise, I'd have a very serious conversation as to whether it's even safe to do so.
Right, I think we should have the right to have that conversation as a school board. That's our job. And if I'm just recommending a letter, and if we want to alter it, we can. But it's not right for everyone to tell us we have the ability to do this, and then no one to give us the ability to do this.
I mean, again, we spent 9 hours, but it's more than just do we open or not open. The dynamics to families that need for their kids to come back to the brick and mortar, and the other options give people an awful lot of different choices for the benefit of our employees too. I don't want to leave them out that are classified, that if we went beyond the 24th, if y'all remember, then we get into a pay gap.
Not if we're at full, okay.
No. If you move beyond the 24th,
Right.
then there's a gap. And I don't know that, particularly for our classified, some of them live paycheck to paycheck. I'm not sure that that's where we want it to be.
I want us to go 50 brick and mortar, 50% virtual. Like Tennessee just opened and they're doing 1/5 of capacity.
But you're
And they're-
at, with parental choice and not us mandating anything, that's where you are right this minute, is at 50-50.
Is that true?
Dr. Cornelius?
Superintendent.
That is true if you look at the surveys right now.
Is it going to roll out to be less than like 10 kids in a class?
No, because as Mr. Dodd mentioned, we'll have to shift most likely some allocations just because of the high numbers that we're seeing in the virtual programs. To maintain the class sizes as we had hoped would certainly require us to add a lot of allocations and thus increasing our costs considerably.
And I do just want to point out, if you do request that the governor give you the ability to open at 50%, for example, you're not just asking for a waiver for that choice, you're asking for a waiver essentially of the whole order, because the order says that you must open brick and mortar schools at least 5 days a week per week for all students. And so if you do come back with a survey that has 60% of parents wanting brick and mortar, now you violated that order if you're going down to 50%. So you may be violating the order in more ways than one, depending on how your numbers shake out if you mandate a capacity requirement.
And we really won't know that until Friday evening, whenever the final surveys come in, is what but what I was trying to say earlier, and my mic wasn't working, I get up early, and this morning at 6:30, Orange County only had 29% brick and mortar out of all their students that did the survey at that time. Another county was looking at postponing the start of school to after, August 31st, and they will lose up to a minimal of $60 million in revenue by doing that, unless the governor waives it or the DOE waives it. So, I mean, is that something that we can afford to do if we were to try to do something and then we lose 60 to 80 million?
I don't know, but we don't get to cost anything out or try anything if we can't even ask for, if we don't have the option to look right now. We don't even have the option to cost stuff out, or like, it's not even on the table.
Well,
And
actually,
okay.
though, Mr. Ward sent you some information showing you how much a student that is on virtual versus a student at brick and
I saw
mortar,
that.
and then it went to middle school and high school, how much of the loss is there that is supposed to be for our Class Size Reduction Act. And so whenever you start calculating that adds up pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things, but as Mr. Mathias said, what you're talking about, we have, in 4 options, we have gave everything that the parents, we are allowing the parents to make the choice. Not so much
not
us,
the teachers.
the parents. The
Right.
parents.
But we're forcing all teachers to go in, and okay. I see this like literally a hurricane coming at us. And right now, we're not in good straits. Right now, like, I can predict that we are going to have school shutdowns. So it's very hard for me to understand why we have to wait to have 1,000 people quarantined to go down to 50%, when we could just do it in advance and then potentially keep our schools open for longer.
But we also, the one area during our marathon, with the health department on the line, that while we were speaking about this 8.8%, and he conceded that it's closer probably to total population to 1.3%, because those that are being tested are ones that have symptoms. That if you don't have a symptom, like I have not been tested, none of my family's been tested. And so this 8.8, while it is out of the 3 to 5% range, it's certainly then you have to look at the data and look at the total population. And at 1.3, I believe that we need to stay the course with the opening, period. Now, whether or not we send the letter or not, I just don't understand to be honest, I don't understand what it would do for us at this point.
But my interpretation of the letter said it basically asks for the waiver so that we have the option to do so.
But if you send the letter, when do you expect the result? I mean, are you going to Federal Express it and give them 24 hours to respond?
I'd be
Because
surprised
then
if he
you're gonna throw the whole
responds at
district
all,
upside
but
down.
I think we should at least try.
But
I
what do
think
we tell the
both
district then? Do we tell the superintendent that, okay, so stop your planning until we hear from the letter? I don't know. Or have
No, I'd be shocked if we got a response, but I think that we owe it to I feel like I owe it to the constituents and the teachers who are being forced to teach when they are telling me they are sick and scared to start. I feel like we owe it to people to try.
Perhaps you haven't been receiving the same messages that I have, but I have been receiving messages from teachers who are terrified to go back, that are terrified that their spouse will go back and turn them into a widow. I think this is a very real thing, and our teachers are unfortunately, I think there are going to be teachers out there who won't have a choice because there are only going to be X number of positions available virtually. And that's the problem, that we are going to be forcing people into a high-risk situation and they have no other choice.
But what would this letter do except move it? I don't even know when you plan on moving it back to. What are you guys thinking?
No,
You're
it's
gonna go
not
September,
moving it
October?
back.
Come on.
It's not moving it back.
Dr. Weisskopf, do you remember your initial plan
Yeah,
of 50 virtual?
Yeah, she's referring to the 50 model, correct, Dr. Burns?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Or we could do 25, you could do whatever you want.
So just keep in mind now, with the options that are available to parents, the only kids that would be impacted by this reduced capacity model would be the traditional students, to which the executive order says we have to have it 5 days a week. So that would be the only complication I would see, is that you're then taking the parents who have opted, who want their children in school 5 days a week, you are then denying them that opportunity that the executive order requires. So remember, everybody
Which
else
is why we need the waiver.
is
or
in
I
a
think.
virtual option. Yeah.
But what do you tell that parent that brick and mortar because they have to go to work? Just too bad?
That we're working on opening the schools, and we're opening in a phased opening so that we can keep our schools open.
All right.
The only thing though that I look at,
I'm still of the opinion that we should send the letter, but I've got a couple of points that I guess I'd like to kind of tweak in the letter. I don't know if the board is, if the rest of the board is still of the opinion to send the letter or not, based on
Yeah.
this.
Well,
I don't know.
Okay, just let me say this, that out of respect for the chair, I would vote to send the letter.
You would vote not to?
Would vote to.
Oh, well,
Yes, do it.
All
And
right,
you and Mark
Mr.
work
Dunn,
out the
did you?
details.
I have a red pen if you want to quick. I don't know where Stephanie is.
Oh,
She texted me, she had some technical difficulties, and
That's fine.
so she is communicating with me.
Okay.
So I guess that being said, the second sentence,
Mm-hmm.
says that we agree with the executive order. I don't agree with the executive order. So I think that's the whole point of us asking for a waiver.
Okay, understand the executive order? You just want to cut agree?
Maybe we understand the intent behind it.
Sure.
We understand the need for the executive order.
yeah, because we don't understand the executive order when it conflicts each other.
That's true too. I don't even understand the executive order.
And so the need or the intent?
Need would be okay.
Okay. The need for the executive order. Okay, what else?
Hold on, I got some notes here.
Is this something me and Mark could like pass back and forth, or do we have to do it publicly? Okay, let's
yeah, I
go.
think pretty much y'all have to do it in the sunshine.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only one I have is I would drop in the last paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
I would just put in Lake County rather than here in Lake County.
Okay,
That's the only one I have. The rest of it,
great.
Although we could adjourn, I mean, y'all could keep talking, we could stay airing, and we could leave.
We haven't had our.
Start of the second paragraph. I think this intro is a little ambiguous.
Okay.
Because it sounds like the local health department has told us that we need this for a sustainable reopening, and the governor is going to be like, no, you don't
Yeah.
the executive order
Yeah,
already-
Sherry brought that up. It's a good point. I wasn't sure how to rephrase it.
So I thought maybe if you say something along the lines that the health department is advised that we meet the criteria for a high-risk environment, as we are currently unable to distance our students by the guidelines, something along those lines. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
And maybe we go so far as to say that in order for us to open with the greatest chance of protecting the safety of our staff and students, our local health department recommends that we open with a reduced capacity in the classrooms.
No, I would want more debate about that if you get the waiver.
That's fine.
So if I'll go the other way on the letter, if we are saying that we absolutely are going to open at 50%, because very honestly, Mark, I'm not convinced that that's the right course.
I think
I'm okay with
I
the
think
letter.
that's a fair argument, Bill. I really do.
Right.
I think that we would really want to have a conversation and like get some pediatricians and some people who
Right.
know
I
more
agree.
than us. Yeah, I
Well, I
agree.
don't know why we invited the local health department if we're going to ignore their recommendations then.
But he spoke out of three sides of his mouth, even when we had him on the Zoom meeting, for goodness sakes.
Yes. It's hard to argue with that. Okay, so I have our local health.
And I also thought maybe it might be worthwhile to include that we've already had to quarantine various times at various schools with our limited summer offerings that we had. That's a true statement.
Yes,
I mean,
and
but-
if
but
you
what is-
remember,
But the
Go ahead,
gov-
Bill.
I mean, it's made the news. I'm sure the governor knows that.
Does
Oh,
he?
that we have. Yeah.
I mean, why are we afraid to tell people that? I mean, I think it just, I think it just says that the reduced numbers.
Okay, throw it in there.
help.
Okay. He mentioned that actually as a soft opening, so I think that's a fair point to make. So I will figure that out. And the greatest chance of opening. Is that anything else, Mark?
Nah, that's good.
All right. Okay, and then Sherry asked, I'll send it to Sherry before, just for she has to edit it, for grammar and stuff. So, okay, let's do board comments. Thank you for your patience. Stephanie's gone, so let's do Mr. Gamble.
Just a couple things. Superintendent, you mentioned again about that transportation card, and I pulled up Ms. Cronin's email that was sent through Ms. Challenger to us. Are we going to be able to get that where they would be able online to fill that out and submit it?
Correct, yes, they're working on that.
Okay. And just want to thank Ms. Franklin for being here today and her kind words. We are in this together. It's not us against everybody else, but we're in this together. Myself, I have a brother, a sister-in-law, and her father that have been tested 3 times, and all 3 times came up positive. So I'm concerned about this as well. I have 3 grandkids that will be going to school, but the problem is the governor says we have to do this, and we've gave 4 plans out there that parents can opt. The problem is, and Mr. Mathias brought it up earlier, about some parents have to go back to work. So what do they do with their kids during that time? So the brick and mortar is the answer to that. And I think we received this past week a resignation from one of our teachers.
A request for leave or something.
A request for leave for a year, I think it was. That's what it was, not a resignation, but a request for leave for a year because of this situation here. So we understand, but this is a hard decision, and I wish it was in a different year, but it's not. It's here, so we just have to move on with it. And I just want to say, Teachers, I understand your concern. Being a pastor, I go through a lot of things every day, and I'm involved with a lot of different people, and I try to take precautions, but I have to depend on someone higher than me. And I'll just say one last thing is I was coming today for this meeting. I was approached by telephone by a minister in the area about trying to put together a prayer vigil before school starts, to try to get all the ministers and those that would like to come together and meet at our schools and try to put together a prayer vigil to pray over our staff, our students, all involved there. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Dodd?
Yeah, thank you. Well, certainly this has continued to weigh on me. I thought that the sleepless nights would end after we had put our reopening plan out there and after we had an option, the fourth option for parents. So I did take some time to compile some thoughts because I think, seeing just a few more stories in the paper and multiple news outlets just continue to give me so much more pause on rethinking this whole thing. And truth be told, I'm one of those parents out there who has not submitted, who has not responded to the survey yet. I'm at odds. I don't even know what to do. As we've seen these reports from multiple news outlets, particularly the ones that caught me, were the passing of a school custodian and an after-school director at Fort Braden School in Leon County. Reading the principal's remarks, he said that he would be lying if he told students and staff that they'd be safe returning to school. So I took some time and read their reopening plan, and it has a lot of similarities to ours. But in actuality, it goes a few steps further, because they are going to do daily health screenings that include the temperature checks, and their cafeterias are also going to be closed, which we're going to require their students to eat in their classrooms to maintain the cohorts. Yet, despite that, despite going further than our protocols, they were not enough to prevent the spread of COVID from taking 2 of their employees' lives this summer. Tonight, when we approved 9.01, our personnel transactions, I had a heavy heart there because it listed one of our staff members as deceased. Now, I'm not sure how many names we're going to see under that heading as we move forward, but these are people we know, people we've worked alongside, people we've hung out with. I just don't know how to wrestle with that when I start seeing people's names that I know. Article 9 of the Florida Constitution provides for a safe and secure system of public schools. So now when people look us in the eye and ask us if we provide a safe and secure system, what are we going to tell them? So a teacher this week sent me a video of her classroom set up for social distancing. I got the little panorama view, and she was able to fit only 8 desks in her room, 8. Now last week, our own health department, and I guess this is under some dispute, but they told us that we would be having a high risk environment in our classrooms. So when we voted to reopen schools, I'll be honest and tell you I did it because we're under an executive order to do so. Do I think they're safe? Absolutely not. I'm not doing it because I'm confident the virus is under control. And for me, that's something that I'm still wrestling with. We've seen it, I think all of us have had no shortage in the email department lately, but a couple of comments have really stood out to me. One email author urged the reopening of schools because he said his family is at minimal risk and the opportunity cost that we have surrendered is at unimaginable proportions. Now that sort of message completely disregards the risks that our staff and the other students might be taking by stepping into the bus, the cafeteria, the classroom, you name it, the hallways. Too many people are at risk still. Now another email correspondent, I thought this was rather observant. He sent me a quote from Spock, and I will confess that I've never seen a Star Trek movie, but I thought the line was appropriate. He said, "Logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few," and that's exactly what's happening right now. It's really sad to me that our society seems to be willing to look the other way because there aren't a lot of people dying. Right now, once those numbers start to look longer, maybe people's lives will contain more value, but it's really sad that they don't because there's so few of them. Now, as I was thinking about all this, it just so happens I'm in the middle of reading the Diary of Anne Frank, and I couldn't be helped but drawn into a scene where Anne was expressing her disappointment at a stranger using her things while her family was in hiding. And she concluded that you have to make sacrifices for a good cause, and that she was glad to make this small one, finding validation in her father's claim that nothing else matters because if they could save even just one of their friends' lives, it'd be worth it. Now, I draw that parallel not because our pandemic resembles the pure evil that is a Holocaust, but because I think that Anne Frank's line of thinking is selfless. So I just have to wonder, how many of our friends' lives will it take before we are willing to say this whole reopening thing is absolute nonsense? The health department says we're high risk. He said that the masks are not a substitute for social distancing. We won't be able to put 6 feet between each student. I'm just terrified that we have not done enough to protect our students and staff. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I just briefly before
Well,
Mr.
actually, I haven't
Matthias-
had comments.
I know. I was just
Okay.
about to pass them to you. I was just briefly before. The only other thing I wanted to mention was that next August the 3rd at 9:30, I'm going to call it Coffee with Christy at 9:30 on August 3rd it will be virtual, and I will put it on Facebook and probably use Zoom. So go ahead, Mr. Matthias, and then you may gavel us out.
I'm actually really sad that we've reached a point where real fear is dictating what is good for our kids and good for our troops. That again, with the health department, I just want to reiterate that we're not at high risk, and he conceded that. When you look at the population, it's 1.3%, Mark. He agreed to that. We are also at a time when the temperature check, everyone's heard of the temperature check, right? That we ought to be doing that. He said they found now that it isn't an indicator. And so that's not necessary, because I was fanatical about that. I have heard from our district staff and the moves and the major steps they're going to be taking to keep our teachers safe and our kids. Are they going to get it? I would say 100%. But COVID is not a death sentence either. And so the media has like super hyped it. If someone feels like that they are at risk or medically at risk, when I was with the sheriff the other day, 2 of his deputies, and the first thing he said was desperately sad, but they had pre-existing conditions that led to their death. The idea that we would not show the leadership and make sure that we're keeping our kids as safe and our teachers as safe as possible, I'm convinced. I walked out of that 9-hour meeting that we had. We have given parents the option. They can choose. Teachers will have options as well for the virtual as we need more allocations. Some, as we got the email, will have to take a leave of absence, and I think we should respect that. You shouldn't go somewhere if you don't feel safe. That would be if you worked at my company. I would say take a leave of absence if you don't feel safe. We can't pay people to not do their job. That's the truth. We cannot not educate our kids. That's our job. And I just think that fear is really controlling us right now, and it's a steady hand that can lead us through this. And I think that we're the board that can do that. And that's all.